For me, growing up, there were unspoken rules about letting other people know that you were Jewish. Did you have this? I did a kind of performance art of never being too Jewish. In my mind, the rules were like, do go hiking, don't say kugel. Do have an LL Bean backpack, don't have frizzy hair. Do go to all of your friends' Christmas parties, don't ever bother explaining why you don't have a Christmas tree. Do everything just like everyone else. Never acknowledge that you feel somehow culturally different. We would never dream of calling that culture I grew up in anti-Jewish or anti-Semitic even. We just called it Connecticut. But nonetheless, to this day, when I hear my own children belting out a Hebrew song on the city bus, I hesitate. Who is around me? Will people be comfortable? Am I crossing some secret boundary? What do you think that hesitation to be openly Jewish is all about? Do you freely tell people you are Jewish, no matter the setting? Do you urge your children to do the same? Or, like me, have you also practiced the subtle art of closeting your Jewish self? So before I really launch into this sermon, I want to say a word about ground rules here. Basically, because you and I are new to our relationship. There's a general consensus in the rabbinate that during your first year at a new congregation, rabbis should stay on easily agreeable topics from the Bima. I've mentioned this to you before. Talk about love. Give a sermon about friendship. Dwell for 10 minutes on joy. Avoid controversy. The new rabbi should be uplifting, but neutral, inspiring, but maintain a certain, shall we say, vanilla quality to her words. It's not a bad approach. It's actually good. It allows us time to develop our bond. It shows that you can trust me. I will make you happy. I will bring you comfort. And I do hope that there'll be many sermons that fit into those categories. However, I am sorry to tell you that I am officially declaring that approach null and void for 5781. Because you and I, we don't have that kind of time. We don't have time for me to stand here and offer you flowery platitudes. It would be beneath the moment, and we are in a new wild world together. So I'm going to ask you to go on that journey with me and give it a chance as I take this platform and use it for what is most needed right now in our world, to talk about urgent moral issues in an urgent moral way from a Jewish perspective. Dialogue, discourse, and disagreement are all the heart of Judaism. You don't have to agree with me, and I don't have to agree with you, but I will always respect you, and I ask you to do the same. It's inevitable that something I'll say along the way in our hopefully many years-long relationship will upset you. Maybe it will even just be the way I say something that rubs you wrong. Let me say in advance, I'm sorry. When we talk about anything, I will listen to you fully, deeply, and seriously. But I am hopeful that we will discuss urgent matters together, seriously, because that is the task of the Jewish people, and that is what the moment calls for. So tonight I'm going to talk about anti-Semitism, and I need to. Because in 2018, a shooter walked into the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh and shot 11 Jews in cold blood, seriously wounding many others and traumatizing countless more. I have to talk about it tonight because in 2019, someone walked into a house of worship in Poway with an AR-15 rifle and opened fire. I have to talk about it because after all that, in walked this year, 2020, with all its glory. Any student of Jewish history knew immediately, instantly, that this pandemic would not be good for the Jews. Blaming Jews for disease is a classic trope of anti-Semitism. We were blamed for the bubonic plague. We were accused of poisoning the well water with the goal of sickening non-Jewish population around us. And for this pretend crime, we were punished with very real violence throughout Europe. The other day, I saw a sign from a rally in Ohio with a picture of a rodent wearing a Jewish star. The words underneath read, "This is the real plague." That's why I need to talk about anti-Semitism tonight, because it's been on the rise, and I'm afraid it's only the beginning. The author Dara Horn taught that all anti-Semitism can be broken down into two main categories: the anti-Semitism of Purim and the anti-Semitism of Hanukkah. The anti-Semitism of the Purim story is simple, evil, and clear. Haman's message is, kill all the Jews. That's how he proposes to solve his perceived Jewish problem. We have that strand in our country. That type of anti-Semitism is easy to spot. It's white supremacists publicly gathering and shouting, "Jews will not replace us." It's the Pittsburgh synagogue killer and the Poway murderer. It's open intolerance and disdain of almost all minority groups. It's hateful public rhetoric, both explicit and implied. That type of anti-Semitism, the type we see in the Purim story, persists today. It's why all synagogues need layers of security, including ours, and why Jewish day schools need armed guards outside just so school children can learn. We see it, we name it, we fight against it. It is dreadful, disdainful, and it cannot continue. But that Purim anti-Semitism is not what I'm going to focus on tonight. For us, what we need to ponder is the anti-Semitism in that second category, the anti-Semitism from the Hanukkah story, which is a bit more nuanced. It's about suppressing Jewish behaviors like the Romans did back when they ransacked the temple. That approach says, don't kill the Jews, just stifle Judaism. Diminish our ability and our desire to practice. Create an environment of hostility. Make us feel intimidated and ashamed of our own culture. Don't acknowledge our history. Do diminish our suffering. Always exacerbate our flaws. Create a culture where self-doubt can flourish. That type of thinking is why 8-year-old children already know that they are somehow different, and why 18-year-olds feel a sense of embarrassment about their own people. That's the anti-Semitism that showed up in the Hanukkah story, and it's much trickier. I'll tell you a story from my own life, and it's tame to what's happening now on college campuses. Years ago, when I was in college, I took this amazing class. It was called Minority Global Communities. The professor was brilliant. He offered the most complicated, nuanced depictions of communities around the globe, and I would leave inspired with newfound empathies for people I had never even heard of. And so after many weeks of the class, when we got to the section about us, about the Jews on the syllabus, I was surprised when his central question was, quote, "Is it racist for Jews to want to marry other Jews?" Why in a class designed to elicit sympathy for minority communities around the globe were the Jewish people singled out and questioned with a deeply disturbing accusation? Why in a class about celebrating the preservation of persecuted minorities did a person with great power suggest a painful, offensive, and just wrong argument when it came to our culture only? It took my breath away. That type of anti-Semitism is subtle and slippery and sophisticated. It's harder to identify and painful to acknowledge because it comes from people and institutions we would otherwise agree with. Think about my admired professor. His question was one of the first steps to building that pyramid towards normalizing negative thinking towards Jews. A few weeks ago, a Chabad house was intentionally lit on fire on a college campus. Are you going to tell me that there's no connection between hostility towards Jews and academia an eruption of violence on campus? The subtle embrace of anti-Jewish thinking is the fertilizer for violence. When we hear it, that's when we need to voice up. When it gets to lighting a Jewish house of worship on fire, it's too late. The Anti-Defamation League calls this process the normalization of anti-Semitism. I call it casual anti-Semitism. It's what the historian Deborah Lipstadt called the dinner party anti-Semite. It's when someone tells you a story and says, you know, she's Jewish, but not like rich. It's athletes casually tweeting Hitler quotations to their millions of followers, which happened very recently. It's elected officials reminding us that with the Jews, it's, quote, all about the Benjamins, which happened. It's the proliferance of Holocaust imagery applied to events that pale in comparison in scope and severity to the actual Holocaust. It's the refusal to teach Jewish history in secular schools. It's the mainstreaming of the term Nazi, feminazi. You know how I feel about that one. It's the bludgeoning, relentless thread of negativity and criticism against Israel, as if Israel is the one singular root of all evil in the world. It's the implication that if Israel would just go away, all the problems of the Middle East, nay, the world, might be solved. It's the hashtag that trended this year, hashtag Jewish privilege. It's the suggestion that Jewish people don't have any real problems because we don't have every problem in the world. It's a billion microaggressions that lead to shame and fear of being outwardly Jewish. That's sort of casual anti-Semitism. It works. It decreases our pride in being Jewish. It makes us less likely to let others know who we really are. It makes us feel shame in our own people. It doesn't really matter in this case if you agree with the criticisms against the Jews or if you vehemently disagree, because the questions, the accusations are still out there, and they creep inside of us, and they sting, and they fester. A member of our congregation mentioned to me that she stopped wearing her Jewish star necklace on Zoom work phone calls because of how she was being perceived. Her apartment background was nice, and she started to wonder, was she becoming the rich Jew? Anti-Semitism is a strange thing. It used to force us to publicly mark ourselves. Now, anti-Semitism diminishes us from doing just that. If you're going to try and logic your way through anti-Semitism, you can't. Give up now. Hatred of any people, including us, is the opposite of logic. Rather, anti-Semitism is a unifying theory of everything, which posits that whatever the most grave problem of a given society is, it's the fault of the Jews, of course. Under communism, we were the capitalists. Under the purity-obsessed Nazis, we were the race contaminators. And under our American narrative, when the greatest sins of our own country are racism and colonialism, the Jews are often painted as racist colonialists. I am certain that under communism, some Jews were capitalists. And I am certain that under Nazism, Jews were from other backgrounds. And I am also certain that in today's day and age, some Jews are racist. And we wish they weren't, and we fight against it. But it is not a coincidence that throughout history, the worst sin a people could make in any given culture has always been assigned to us. That type of thinking, pumped into the public and private spheres, makes it very hard for Jews to want to be Jewish. And it's scary because it works. Standing up against the Purim type of anti-Semitism is obvious, and we will continue to do that. But we also need to notice and fight against this more subversive strain of anti-Jewish thinking. Your children and my children already know that they hesitate to be Jewish in public. Are we willing to become less and less outwardly Jewish? What will be left? I say no more. I say we need to make 5781 a year of Jewish pride. I say go out into this world and wear your Jewish star necklace. Show off that Chai tattoo. Wave your Israeli flag if you want to, and put that menorah in your window for all to see. Tell people you are Jewish, or that you are raising a Jewish family. When people bring shame, we will respond with pride. When people spread lies, we will respond with facts. When people casually dissuade us from embrace of our Jewish identity, we will respond with Jewish practice. We will do more learning, more community, more religion, have more Jewish experiences. It is our only choice. We must stand up and be counted as Jews if we want Judaism to continue. Like all people, we have flaws. Torah itself emphasizes this point, calling us a stiff-necked people over and over and over again. But that is not all we are, and it's not what we are. We are the ancient people of the book who introduced ideas into our world that animate civilization to this day. We are Tzedek Tirdof, pursuers of social justice who fight for what's right both within our community and beyond. We are a people who choose to emphasize the value of serious question with complex answer. We are idol smashers, question askers, kugel cookers, Torah readers, mitzvah doers, camp goers, and Jewish song singers. We are a collective of survivors, immigrants, and refugees from countries from all over the world, from Germany to Iran, from Lithuania to Iraq, from Yemen to Argentina, from Ethiopia and beyond. We are the descendants of a tiny group of slaves from which emancipated centuries of thought, tradition, and culture. The very persistence of our existence is remarkable. The Holocaust decimated a third of our people. We are likely never to recover our population, but we are the ones who are still here. What are we going to do with our time on this earth? Be intimidated and shamed into diminishing our Judaism? Or stand up and be counted as part of our ancient, persecuted, yet persevering people? The choice is ours for 5781. I intend to let my Jewish flag fly high for all to see, and I hope you'll join me. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be God's will.